Welcome to the Easton School Committee meeting of Thursday, September 10th, 2020. In keeping with the ongoing emergency order from Governor Charlie Baker to limit gatherings and maximize social distancing, and under legislation passed to address remote board meetings during the emergency declaration, this meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. If you have any questions for us, please type them into the Q&A, including your name and address, and then we'll get to that as appropriately timed. Okay, I think that's it. And call the meeting to order. And now that I've called the meeting to order, I'm going to make a motion to enter into an executive session and will return to open session for the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to collective bargaining for the Easton Educators Association Unit A. And in my opinion, having this discussion in public would be detrimental to the bargaining position of the school committee. Do I have a second?
O'Neill second. Oh, sorry.
All
Okay.
right.
Michelle can have the second.
Those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durance, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes. Star, yes.
All right, we will be we'll be back shortly, hopefully. Okay, is everybody here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Lynn's here. Okay, we're all here. All right, welcome back to the open session of the Easton School Committee meeting of Thursday, September 10th. Next up are the minutes of August 6th, 2020. Are there any questions, corrections, comments, please? Nothing? Lynn, good job. All right, do I have a motion to accept these minutes?
Star, yes.
So-
Star, so moved.
And do I,
Wiseman, second.
thank you. All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
Thank you. All right, next up, approval of Chromebook Parts.com contract. Dr. Cabral.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know how many of you are aware, but there has been a worldwide Chromebook shortage for a lot of confounding reasons. One, of course, is supply and demand. Another, however, is a freeze that was put on certain parts and components that were coming from other countries. We were told that there was a whole shutdown of unfair labor violations and so forth. So, literally an international issue has affected Easton. So we have anticipated delivery dates of late September and October. So what we did was we went and searched out a new vendor. We went to we consulted with the Attorney General's office because this vendor is not on the state contract list that you hear us talk about often. And we were given the go-ahead under the circumstances to make a rather large order with them. And so we did, and that is this order. And so we are hopeful that we're getting the remaining units before the opening or before students actually come in. But that is what this contract is for. And it is, as I said, it is not on the state contract list, but we did get express permission from the AG's office to utilize them under the circumstances.
The amount of money on this quote, this is coming out of that 700-something thousand for Chromebooks? Yes, Chrissy?
It's coming out of federal grant money, yes.
Okay, federal grant money, thank you.
Yeah. Because some of it came from the technology grant and some of it came from the federal grant. So it's not all from one source. We had to parcel it out a little bit.
Okay.
But
And
it
will
is,
this-
it is
will
through,
this-
it is
will this-
through
will this-
grants.
But it's all federal money. None of it is
Right.
from the operating budget, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, but will this order complete our Chromebook order as far as what we already got? What this will finish it up for now?
Yeah, definitely for students. I'm not sure if all the teacher Chromebooks are in yet. I have to check with John Souza about that, but this will be it for students, not for teachers. Yeah, this will be it for the students. Teachers are coming shortly after.
Okay.
Chrissy?
Michelle, you
I'm
Chris,
sorry, I just wanted to add in that we are still awaiting some of the Chromebooks, however, so not all Chromebooks are in yet. We have shipments on their way.
Right,
Michelle,
it should
you
be
had
in
a
by the time kids are here.
Well, yeah, I have a couple. So this number of Chromebooks listed in this, you're saying those have not arrived yet. Who are these for? Are these for the younger grades or? I'm a little confused. So can you explain to me, did we order all new Chromebooks for every kid?
Yeah,
Or
no.
supplementing?
We had 1,100 Chromebooks in district and about 3,500 or 3,600 students. So we ordered over 2,000 Chromebooks to supplement what we have.
Okay.
We ordered touchscreen Chromebooks because not everything we have was able to be reused because we cycle out a certain amount every year because they've been in service for so long or they're breaking down or what have you. We're using touch screens for up to grade 1. And so those were ordered. And then the other Chromebooks, the ones that the students are more familiar with, we're using from grades 2 up.
So the ones that have been handed out or starting to get handed out, is those new or are those
It's a
ones that we already?
combination. It's a
It's a com-
combination of both.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? So we have to vote on this, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I
Do
have
I-
just one question. So the price
Go
on this is in line with estimates for the other vendor
It is.
or matches? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it isn't exactly the same, but
Yep.
we're actually getting them.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sure that the others are way behind. I'm not confident in the October date on the other ones.
Okay.
Because there was literally a freeze on the labor to create the parts for the computers.
Do I have a motion to approve the ChromebookParts.com contract?
So moved.
Star second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes. Star, yes.
Okay, thank you. Next up, vote to approve change to the policy to address suspected sports-related head injury concussion.
Okay, so I
Dr.
don't
Cabral.
see Bill Matthews here, but as you can see, the changes are mostly semantic and dates. So if you wanted to go through, he was kind enough to redline any of those changes for you. If you go to page 4, you can see that we were utilizing probably the biggest change of substance. We were utilizing a particular software to manage the information called Impact. We don't typically put the name of a specific program because those do change occasionally. And that happens to be the case this time around. And so it is going to be a different program. And instead of putting in the new program, he put in that it would be a post-concussion assessment, cognitive testing, but not the particular name. So that's the reason for that change, is because just the software that's being used is different. And so he just wanted it to be accurate. It says we're using Impact. We're not going to be using Impact anymore. And then every place after that it says Impact, he simply changed it to computerized concussion post-injury test. And I do, obviously, I'm sure we all appreciate his efforts of reviewing that and making sure that that technicality was fixed. I think he understands it's important. We want to have, things as up to date as possible. So I appreciate him doing that work.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Jen.
Do we know why we're changing technology vendors for that? I just know that Impact is widely used and is really ubiquitous in the
He did tell me,
post-concussion testing industry.
He did tell me, and of course I can't remember, but it was compelling.
Okay.
But I will get it for you. He did tell me it was either not available or it was a very good reason, and he is extremely comfortable with the new vendor.
Okay.
But I will
Thank you.
definitely forward an email to you about that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the changes in the injury and concussion policy, sports injury.
Durant, second.
All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes. Star, yes.
All right, thank you, everybody, on that, and thank you, Mr. Matthews. All right. Vote to approve music plan. Dr. Cabral.
So we similarly have another proposal for you from our new department chair for the music department, Jeff Benson, who's joining us. Thank you, Mr. Benson. He was very meticulous in putting this together for you. He and I subsequently met with the Board of Health to make sure that they looked it over for safety and alignment with the town requirements and what she has been getting from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. And she did approve it in terms of that lens. And so he is bringing it before you this evening to answer any questions you might have and look for your approval of this so that he can distribute this to parents and we can make it part of our back to school plan.
Thank you. So I had a further conversation today with Kristen Kennedy regarding the plan, because we were originally only looking at one of the extracurricular ensembles, which started to, of course, then people started asking about the other ones. And, you know, I had been trying to address immediate concerns because marching band was supposed to start mid-August. And so people were really wondering about that. And so we then decided to look at our slate of extracurriculars 6 through 12. And so I've updated the proposal to include all of that. Kristen approved everything, and I'm happy to give everybody the brief rundown if you hadn't had a chance to read through it. I tried to keep it fairly succinct, but the short version is we will be running chamber orchestras essentially as normal, because in orchestra there are no wind instruments or singing. And so those students can rehearse indoors, masked, and be socially distant and effectively have their typical setup. We're flip-flopping the marching band and the jazz band season. So we're going to run jazz band this fall instead of marching band, because we can keep those groups to 25 or less. And then, you know, following and exceeding the recommended guidelines, we can rehearse outdoors with the jazz band. Show choir is interesting. We're planning on running show choir in a hybrid setting, because right now a lot of the current research, while DESE has included singing with the playing of wind instruments, a lot of research that's coming out actually points to singing as being a little bit worse. More of a quote super spreader type activity. So out of an abundance of caution, even though DESE is allowing that outdoors, we're going to keep singing virtual right now, and just be running live dance rehearsals with the show choir in accordance with the guidelines. So in addition to the DESE guidelines, we're proposing that we go a little above and beyond with that. So I supplemented with the National Association for Music Education guidelines, which were distilled from an aerosol study commissioned by the International Coalition of Performing Arts out at the University of Colorado. And so we are proposing to put MERV 13 bell covers on all instruments except flute. Just the physics of that, the flute works a little differently. We're going to put a new invention called flute shields on the flutes. They're face shields that clip to head joints. And then obviously no shared instruments or materials. We'll be instituting a contact tracing and attendance policy with all of the ensembles, and then a social contract between students and staff in regards to symptom checking and attendance. So that's the plan right now. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Benson? Caroline, you're on mute. Unmute and I'll let you talk.
I think I did the opposite. I think I muted myself instead of unmuted myself. I'm just wondering if I know that we don't normally do it this way, but we want to, obviously I'm very interested in approving a program for music, but I'm wondering if we can have some sort of caveat that, you know, there will be a continual sort of review of the latest research in, I mean, I wouldn't describe singing and things like show choir as just a little bit more risky. I think based on all of the reading I've been doing, they're substantially more risky than the vast majority of activities, except maybe things like basketball, which also, you know, I've heard described as a gift to the COVID virus. But so I just want to make sure that we're not kind of saying, well, I'm wondering who's going to make the decision and at what point that we can kind of loosen some of the restrictions, because my own guess, based on what I've been reading, is that the restrictions probably cannot be legitimately lifted until perhaps next year. So, I mean, these are high, some of these activities related to music are definitely high risk and are definitely super spreader activities. I think that the evidence is overwhelming at this point of that. So I just want to be sure that we're, continually checking, and I don't expect, Mr. Benson, I don't expect you to be, the epidemiologist on this. I think we have to have a sort of protocol for checking with the medical experts. Or, I mean, I think the CDC, some of their guidelines have been called into question, unfortunately. DESE is very focused on providing opportunities for kids, terribly important, but at the same time, I want to defer to the medical folks when we, as we pursue extracurricular activities of any kind, but particularly the higher risk music or athletic activities.
So all of the plans that we're putting in place are indefinitely at this point. If we were going to change anything, we would speak to you again to let you know that we were going to suggest modifications to a plan. And there would need to be obviously compelling and factual evidence-based information in order for that to happen.
Okay, because sometimes I think people kind of get together and say, you know what, looks like DESE's going to let us do this now. And I just want to be sure that we're really focused on, what the infectious disease folks have to say, and maybe not always just, I shouldn't say just educators, but, not everyone is necessarily on the same page about these things. But I do think that we have to give higher priority in terms of who we take advice from to the medical experts.
Absolutely. And I think we're fortunate in the fact that the plans that have been brought before you have done exactly that. And so I would expect them to continue that. And if they were going to make any changes to their plans, including relaxing them, that they would make sure that you knew about it and were able to give input to it, just like we're doing right now. Yeah,
And
but
everything they've done is
right?
above and beyond DESE guidelines. In fact, everything we've done as a district is above and beyond DESE guidelines for that exact reason. So I think we are in full alignment on that thinking.
And for my part, I certainly, am trying to keep as current as I can on all of the research from as many sources as I can get a hold of. And if I felt that the DESE guidelines in these particular cases were, not stringent enough with these activities based on the research that I've done, I out of an abundance of caution, I wouldn't have necessarily recommended that any of them go forward.
Right. Which you are, frankly, with chorus,
Yeah.
you're not having them indoors, for example. So I think Caroline's point, I don't want to speak for you, but I think the point is we do not change this policy or relax it at all unless the school committee is consulted first.
Yep.
Is that?
No, I appreciate that. And by the way, Mr. Benson, Jeff, congratulations. I was just delighted to hear that you were willing to take this rather difficult position right now, but thank you for accepting that.
Thank you.
Michelle, you had a question?
Well, I have a question and a comment. My first was congratulations. Super excited that you're at the helm. Are in any of these ensembles, is there any type of competition, virtual or not, that could potentially be happening, or what's?
So we're starting to look a little bit better in that regard. A couple weeks ago, it looked like pretty much everything was canceled. So some of the organizations are actually sort of branching out of their comfort zone. And right now it looks like US bands, which is typically our marching band circuit, is working on a series of virtual solo and small ensemble festivals. Pretty much what they'll do is take anything you've got in any form that you've got it. And, for the entrance fee, they'll assign you judges and you can compete that way with whatever components you have available. And I think that MICA, our state organization, is starting to look at those avenues as well. Again, I think out of just an overabundance of caution, none of the state organizations right now want to take on the risk of even outdoors, a live performance. But I think, again, that's something that we can revisit down the road.
Are those Micah and US bands, are they switching like to the wedge season like you are? Or merging
No,
in?
actually, US Bands is they're looking to start in the fall when they would normally start their marching band shows and run all year. There are some schools that are going ahead with marching band around here, and certainly in areas like the Midwest where they play it a little more fast and loose with that, I think. So because they're a national organization, they're starting now to run for marching band. But I think they're looking at keeping it going for most of the year. And some of the organizations are actually looking at running show days on Saturday when they live stream the submitted performances. So people are starting to get creative, and it's nice to have those goals at the end for the kid. You know, it's instead of practicing to use a sports analogy, we're practicing with the potential of playing a game rather than just practicing and never playing a game.
And I just on another comment, I appreciate that you've taken the guidance are out there and you've actually kind of upped the ante a little. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jen, I saw your hand.
Yes. So I guess first, congratulations.
Thank you.
I know some freshman percussionists who are very excited to get to continue to study with you. That was really welcome news for a bunch of boys I know. And you know, certainly baptism by fire for you to be taking on this role in unprecedented times. So we really appreciate your expertise and that, you know, the great job you've done kind of diving in and looking for the best solutions. Quick question on show choir. So my understanding is show choirs, is it Show Choirs of America that's the governing body there? Is there something more local, or is it only the national organization?
So Show Choirs of America is, it's more of a confederacy. It's not really a governing body as much as it is a sort of a uniting organization. They do run some festivals out in the Midwest. Out here, all of our competitions tend to be independently run by schools, and then we get them sanctioned by the organization. Bay State, for example, is the big show choir festival that we host, but that one is never sanctioned by Show Choirs of America. But then the competitive festivals that we go to are.
Okay. So has SCA made any progress with giving guidelines on how a season might shape up or anything like that?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
And again, where that tends to be pushed more towards January. I think usually show choir competitions kick off mid to late January. I think they're kind of waiting it out and seeing how the bands fare.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Chrissy, did I see your hand? No, Chrissy, no, okay. Are there any other questions? Did anyone else have a comment or a question? All right, Jeff, thank you very much. So I'm going to make the motion that we approve the EPS extracurricular music proposal, and that if there are any changes, they will be brought to us immediately.
O'Neill
Second.
I think I started first. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. So all those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Grants, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes. Star, yes.
All right. And Jeff, thank you very much. And again, congratulations from all of us.
Thank you
Good
all
luck.
so much.
Jeff,
Really quick.
before you take off, can you hold on for a second, please?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is a question, and I think with Jeff here, he might be the best person. From Lauren Loomis for Abbey Road. Any word on spring musical? Wouldn't tryouts be in October-ish? I mean, auditions. Hi.
So yes, with the spring musical, I've actually already been in touch with Mrs. Dalrymple, and we are going to hold off on that for a little while. We do have a plan in place for something to potentially take place in the spring. It wouldn't at this point, we're not projecting that it would necessarily be a full-on musical like we're used to, but certainly an activity in that vein. And so I think we are going to hold off on a definite answer for that until the new year, sort of assess where we are, and if we can take musical and fit it in with the guidelines and, you know, that the rest of the extracurriculars have. or potentially whatever the situation is, then maybe it could be different. So we are discussing it, and we hope to have a plan in place.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much for being here and for your great job on the plan.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Number 8, bye. Vote to approve change to the 2020-2021 school calendar regarding preschool and kindergarten start dates. Dr. Cabral.
Okay, so as we were putting our plan together, we realized that we were updating things and hadn't gone back and updated the school calendar. It did cause some confusion. We are extremely sorry for that. For the kindergarten and preschool traditionally do not start on the same day as grades 1 through 12. There's a purposeful reason for that. They have a session where the parents and the students meet the teachers, see the classroom, a bit of an open house, if you will. This is the first experience, certainly for the children, but for a lot of the parents as well. And as we were developing our back to school plan, the pre-K to 2 principals really expressed a strong desire from the teachers to maintain that practice. They felt it was very important. In fact, probably more important in light of the whole COVID concerns and the non-traditional way we're beginning school. And so they did work in the what has been the traditional starting days for kindergarten and pre-K before grade 1. And so it does change the starting days by 1 day, because the students will still come in. They will just then miss 1 day and then they will start school. So they will actually begin, it currently shows kindergarten students starting on the 17th. What will happen on the 17th is that the first cohort will come in, cohort A, and the kindergarten teachers will be arranging that and sending that information to that cohort so they know exactly when they're scheduled to come in. And then cohort B will go on the next day, which is the 18th. And that's a Friday. So then all students will begin on the 21st. So instead of all students starting on the 17th, cohort A will be on the 17th, cohort B will be on the 18th, and then cohort A will come back in person while cohort B is online on the 21st of September, which is the Monday. We have asked the principals to make sure they send a special correspondence to the kindergarten parents, letting them know about that. And so they have done that. We are aware that there was a glitch in the system for center school yesterday. And so they fixed that, but there was a glitch. And so people got multiple emails. That was a computer problem. And they fixed that, but the other 2 schools received it yesterday.
Jen, I saw your hand up. You have a question?
Yeah, so it's been a long time since I had a kindergartner. So just to clarify for anyone who may be watching, on the 17th, if you're in cohort A, is your student going to school for a full day, or is that more what used to be a drop-in orientation type of day?
It's an orientation, but it's not going to be a drop-in because
Right. It has
for
to be
social
scheduled.
distancing purposes. So the kindergarten teachers are going to reach out to each family individually. The teacher, the actual teacher of the student will reach out individually to let the parents know when they're scheduled to go on that day.
Okay.
And same thing for cohort B for the 18th.
Okay. All right. So not a full day for either.
Right. It's actually, much more concentrated time for the student and the parent to see the classroom, meet the teacher, ask any questions they might have. We find that typically I think everybody probably knows there are a lot of tears on kindergarten day, just in a normal year. And sometimes the kids cry too. So we just want to make sure that everybody is well acclimated and can get all their fears vetted out and meet the teacher and have some one-on-one time. And they felt very strongly about that. So we do apologize that our original schedule that we did not reflect that, but we have a new version now going out. So again, we are deeply sorry for any confusion on that. We believe it's for a very good reason, and that parents will ultimately be very pleased for this opportunity, but we do realize it may have caused an inconvenience for some people, and we are very sorry for that.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to make a motion to approve the change for kindergarten for the 2020-2021 school calendar for their start date, preschool and kindergarten start dates. Do I have a
Wiseman second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
Luca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Discussion and possible vote on the face coverings guidelines, sorry. Do I want to send it to Jackie or Dr. Cabral? Who's taking this?
It's, you guys put together a wonderful policy. We ran it by the nurses so that they could have input from the medical perspective and for what they have already put out. They did make a few recommendations. They're here for your review, and then you can approve the guidelines and we can share them publicly.
Okay, Jackie, go ahead.
So based on our conversation last week, I made a couple of changes that you all had suggested, and I just wanted to make sure those were as we had talked about. And then after that, I did go through the comments sent by Mrs. Mail and really appreciate them. And I thought we could just kind of go through and see where they would fit in, if there may be some that you want in, you don't want in, how we wanted to approach this. So I think the first thing was just on 4B for neck gaiters. I updated that a little bit to include not just athletic, but music activities. I took out the playing field language and just kept it outside. That was one of the changes. The other two changes really had to do with when face shields were being used. So that was more in sections 7A2 and 7D2. I added some language in there as well. So I don't know if you want to take a look at that and see if you're okay with that before we go through the nurses' comments, or how you want to work it, Nancy.
Okay, I don't know, for some reason, I still have the old one and I don't have your changes. I don't know why.
Okay.
I know what we talked about. No, that's okay. I know what we talked about, so I'm fine. Yeah, I think we should, I think it's a great document. We should go through the nurse, the one that we got about from the nurses, right? And just make sure that
Sure.
everything, go ahead.
So I thought, so her first comment was about any face covering exception. The doctor's note must also include the medical documentation as to the reason a mask is unable to be worn. And so I thought, if you all are okay with that, I added that in. I'm trying to think. I'm just trying to look where it's under. So it's under 7B and 7C that we could add that language where it says the doctor's note will be required, and then we could add in her language, which must include the medical documentation as to the reason a mask is unable to be worn.
Yep. Good.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Perfect.
Jackie and Nancy,
Yeah.
if I could just, Nancy, I think you're right. I think that what we have in our folder is actually the older version.
Yep.
So,
But we had
it may be a little confusing.
But we had talked about what.
Yes, we talked about the new version, right? So, but,
Right.
yeah, but
I
that
think
is
I
what's in the
emailed it. I
folders.
didn't email it to you guys.
You did
You
email
did.
to it. No,
Okay.
but what's in our folder is different. So we should
Okay,
get it from the separate email is what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Right. That may
Yeah.
be my fault. I don't think I sent
No,
it
no,
to
I
Lynn,
don't,
so
it's
Lynn, I
not. Yeah, right.
apologize.
Right. No, that's,
Yeah.
so we should look for it in the email instead. Yeah. Just,
Okay, yeah. All right.
I do have, Nancy, I have one question sort
yeah.
of throughout
Go ahead.
this section. I feel like for some of our high needs students, we have lots and lots of documentation in place that it's already provided by their medical providers to have a diagnosis and be on an IEP and get all their accommodations. So I'm wondering in those cases do we feel strongly that it's necessary for a doctor's note and consultation to be provided in every single one of those cases where this may arise, even if it's a student with special needs where, you know, maybe it's the special education director or the special ed leader in the building has access to all of the information and might be in a position to provide a recommendation. Just wondering how we feel. I don't want to put an additional burden on families, especially at a time when getting access to care providers is extremely difficult. So just wanted to open that up and see what we think.
Caroline?
Jen, I feel like this is 2 meetings in a row that I'm not. My feeling is, you know, I've actually read a couple of articles, What Else Is New lately, about the fact that there are really very, very few conditions of any kind that really prevent a person from wearing a mask. It may take a little practice. It may take, you know, some extra effort. Obviously, we have identified a sort of some general categories of students that we would expect to have difficulty, but I don't think, I think it's kind of a burden on the special ed director or whoever to say, you should make what is essentially a medical determination. I mean, I agree with you that, you know, it's a pain in the neck, but are we going to say the parents can decide then? Or are we going to say, you know, or you know, in consultation with the SPED director? I mean, I feel like because there actually are so few conditions that would kind of make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, even for a young child to wear a mask, I'm not sure that it makes sense for us to leave it kind of, well, it'll be up to people who are not medical personnel to make that decision based on other challenges that the child faces. I mean, in some ways you could argue that, you know, part of normalization is to do what is now the norm for even children who may otherwise face challenges, intellectual disabilities, et cetera. So I'm not exactly comfortable with changing the medical. I mean, essentially all you'd really need from a doctor is a simple statement, the condition, you know, which are well documented in your files, will also make it virtually impossible for this child to wear a mask or whatever. I mean, I don't think that we would necessarily say we have to have all new medical diagnostic information about those particular kids, but I kind of feel with the specific, I mean, the mask wearing is so critical for everyone else's safety that I kind of want to set a higher bar for that, even though I do understand what you're saying about burdening the parents of these wonderful kids. But I mean, I know they're already, you know, burdened so much with all of the extra work they have to do on their child's behalf. And I totally understand that. And I'm repeating myself now, but I just, you know, I'm trying to weigh the public health, the larger public health concern with, you know, the unfortunate, probably additional burden for those parents. I mean, there may be something in the documentation that makes it clear that that would be impossible. I mean, an extreme sensory issue, for example, but I think there are many conditions that would not necessarily, many, you know, challenges that kids face that wouldn't necessarily prevent them from wearing a mask. So I don't know. What does everybody else think?
Go ahead, Michelle.
I agree with Caroline. I don't think you would have to have a consultation. I'm pretty sure that that's something a lot of doctors' offices have, like an online portal. You could just send a message saying, I need a note, and they're going to know the student or the child well enough to know whether they could do that or not. And then I also wonder about if we don't require a note and we start making those decisions ourselves, or somebody in the school department, is there any liability if a child gets sick and we said, we don't think you need a mask?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm just thinking there's some cases where, you know, it's incredibly obvious that a student is not going to be able to wear a mask with ear loops and take it off and put it on. You know what I mean? Where something alternative like a gaiter that they can pull down and put up, or they're going to need assistance taking it on. It's incredibly obvious, and it just seems like I don't want to put a hurdle in place when something's really, really obvious. But I understand your feedback, and it's not, again, not something that I feel strongly about. I just wanted to raise the question, make sure
That's a
that,
great question.
we're at least thinking about those cases that where it is really obvious that this will be quite a challenge and need an accommodation.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Jackie, did you have a question, Jackie?
No, just whenever you're ready to continue, I'll continue.
All right, so so is that okay that we put the first part of the nurse's decision on the face mask from a doctor's note on 7B and C? Or in that area? Is that okay? It's kind of already there, just has to have the
A
documentation.
little more detail, right?
Okay, more detail,
Good
right,
change.
okay. That's okay, all right. Go ahead, Jackie.
And then she also suggested adding the CDC links about how to wear a face covering, how to wash it. Some of them are, some of how to wear them and how not to wear them were very useful. Yeah, don't wear it on your head, don't wear it on your elbow. I really like that.
Well, some of us need more guidance than others.
They're not
Anyway.
slingshots. Yeah.
Right. So I thought maybe that could go under number 5. It says appropriate face covering should, and has a list, and maybe at the end I could add the links there if you thought that was a good place.
Sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep, that makes sense.
Okay. And then if we could skip the mask breaks for just 1 second, and then just go on to face shields for a second.
Yep.
That's kind of at the end. She put in some language about how to clean the face shield. So I can certainly add that in where we talk about face shields, and then I have a little paragraph on how they're cleaned. I can certainly revise what I have in our document to what Mrs. Mail had suggested, if you're okay with that.
Yep, so that'll go in
The approved disinfectant,
7A2
yeah.
and
So that would be 7A2 and
7D2.
7D2.
right, okay, good.
Okay. So then just going back to the mask breaks, I wasn't sure how you want to handle this, because we haven't really talked about, I mean, for a couple of things, for mask breaks to be 6 feet apart, we have that in already. We have in that they need to be able to wash their hands before and after mask breaks. But there are a couple other suggestions she had. So one was recommended that students have at least 2 mask breaks per day. And then if there are going to be more scheduled, identify what spaces will be used. I didn't know if that was kind of within our purview, or that's a building specific thing, or how we wanted to handle that.
Yeah, I actually had a question about that too. I'm not sure that you want to set a minimum number. I mean, there may be times when you have an older group of kids who are fine with, not needing a second break, especially. And then of course you're looking at the elementary that, to my surprise, now is providing the early elementary lunch. So that's obviously a period that kids won't be wearing their masks. So I don't know, I had a little bit of a question about kind of setting a minimum number. What does everybody else think?
I almost think it's, there's a big difference between pre-K to
Right,
5
right.
even, and I mean,
I think it would be up to the teacher. We don't want to have 5 breaks because
I think it would be good for each building to just kind of make them amount, like, you don't want to say, all right, everybody's required to have a two mask break time, 2 mask breaks per day, when they might need 3, they might need 1. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it should be up to each school. That's my opinion.
I do agree with that up to a point. I think there needs to be some medical input though. I mean, the more mask breaks you have, the more risk you create for the rest of the students and for the students in the class, and of course the teacher. So I wouldn't say, you know, I mean, you don't want a teacher having to decide every time a kid raises their hand and says, could we have a mask break? I mean, I think that there should be a sort of movement toward having a minimal number to the degree possible. They're only in school 4.5 days initially, and part of that is just kind of getting settled. They're going to have, I guess, one mask break would be the snack break. I mean, I guess that's the idea. So, you know, a second one might make sense. I mean, as long as they're outside and distanced, I think we'll be fine, but that's only going to be for a couple of months. And then we're going to face a much more, I think, high risk situation, the more mask breaks we have, quite frankly. So I just don't, I don't want to give the impression that whenever, you know, a child raises his or her hand and says, could we have a mask break? That's going to be okay. I think we should, the expectation should be that there are as few as possible, that we're all protecting each other, we're taking care of each other, we're being strong and brave and, you know, resilient. And, you know, then the teacher can kind of judge, as you said, Nancy, based in large part on the ages of the kids and kind of what their capacity is to have masks on for a long time. But I do think that once people wear a mask a while, they become less aware of it. I think that this idea that everybody needs breaks all the time is because everybody takes breaks all the time. I mean, it's one of those circular situations, sort of. Anyway, I don't know. I just, go ahead.
I also think with the mask, at least for the younger kids, it's also kind of a movement break, like get up
Yeah.
out of your chair, out of the classroom, go outside, you know,
Go outside,
because
right.
it's a different kind of classroom situation than they've been used to. But I can't imagine a teacher's going to be taking, you know, multiple mask breaks during their 4-hour day. I can't imagine they'd want that kind of disruption anyway. So I don't know. I mean, I can add something that says, it says during designated mask break opportunities for students, you know, as determined by the building principal, as determined by, I mean, I can add some language like that if you think. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, what bothered me a little bit is this students have at least 2 mask breaks. I think that's, I understand we want to make kids comfortable and, you know, we do understand that this is a challenge for everyone to wear masks. But I really kind of had a reaction to that. It is recommended that students have at least 2 mask breaks per day. Now this does say mealtime and recess, which would be fine. I mean, since we now have at the early elementary a mealtime, that could be one, and recess. Identify what spaces, ideally outdoors, will be used is good. I think that's a good idea to identify spaces. I mean, I'm hoping that it's possible for all students, if there's a major thunderstorm with lightning, to have the distance, but there may be times when kids can't take a mask break because it's not safe.
Well, I know in the building specific plans, they've all talked about this pretty much, like that they're going to be outside when they can, but I think they've designated spaces in the building that if they couldn't go outside and they needed to have break. Am I remembering correctly?
Yes,
Yes.
because we're not
Yeah.
using the cafeterias for lunches by and large, maybe a class. We're not using the gymnasiums, for example. I really don't think 2 is going to be a problem, because 1 is going to be, if you're talking about the littles, right, that's where your major concern is. They're going to have a meal break, and then they're going to have 1 break during, I mean, they go to the restroom even
Right.
together. So they're going to have 2. There's no question about it. For high
Not in the
school, I
restroom.
just think it's a little harder to validate, or not necessarily, but to monitor, because the kids are going to be in all different classes. So how do you know if a student has had a mask break already or not? I think it's as needed, when it can be provided safely, as needed at the discretion of the teacher, is fair, because they're in 5-6 different classes a day.
Okay.
So if everybody gives them a mask break, that's pretty disruptive and potentially not necessary. They're getting movement breaks in between when they move their class. So if you wanted to say 2 for the lower elementary, you certainly could. I'm sure they're going to get at least 2. But it may not be necessary for the upper grades.
So it could say during designated mask break opportunities for students as needed at the discretion of the teacher. Are you guys comfortable with that?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, one would hope that there would be a larger conversation at the school level for the teachers to have some guidance themselves so that they don't, Johnny doesn't come home and say, oh, my teacher lets me have 4 mask breaks and poor Susan only ends up with 2. Although I think Susan's safer, as is her class.
Well, it's going to depend. You can't really compare classes. You don't know. Maybe Susie's class needed a mask break. Maybe,
Right.
it can't be uniform every single class.
No, I
If
do
we're gonna
agree.
serve the kids and offer it when they're struggling, then that's going to be different for every class. And it could be different every day. They may need more breaks on a particular day because it's particularly warm or what have you, or they're doing a lot of talking to each other or for whatever reason. It's very difficult to make sort of blanket statements like that. The teachers are very in tune with their kids. You have to remember, they're going to have like 10 kids in front of them. It's not like they have this huge expansive auditorium of kids to look at. I think it will be
Well,
fine.
I may have misunderstood, Leisha, but if they're doing a lot of talking, that's the last time they should have their masks off. You said if they're doing a lot of talking, they might need a break, but they can't. I mean,
No.
That's
She means
when
After,
you would
like
still,
after, in response
Right.
to having
Okay.
talked a lot.
you,
Need
well,
a
I do
minute to
think it's
breathe.
important. I mean, I think Jackie has done that. The fact that ideally it would be outdoors. I mean, even if there's a little rain or, even a lot of rain, an umbrella would go a long way. I just feel like every mask break raises the risk level. And that's why I'm just hoping that we can be as cautious as possible with this. I
And
know I'm being a thorn in everyone's side
Well,
here, but
because I think you're thinking of mask break as a time where everything stops and they all take off their masks and they have a break. But when they have PE and they go outside, that's a mask break.
right.
When they have their meal, that's a mask break.
Right.
So they're going to have, teachers are very in tune with their students' needs and are not going to want a student who's struggling with a mask to not have a break. I think is very different. They're going to have water where they'll be, they can have a straw underneath their mask to have water. That is certainly relieving. And maybe not necessarily needing a mask break because of that. There are plenty of opportunities. I know the mask is new, but keeping littles comfortable and attending to their needs is nothing new.
okay.
Jackie,
Their biological needs. Teachers are very familiar with taking care of little's biological needs.
And Jackie, I think your 6A and B really, it has this in it, really.
Okay.
6A, and B. Yeah.
Okay. So I won't add that language. And then the other, so we have in that they should be at least 6 feet apart. She suggested using tape or other markers to identify keeping them 6 feet apart. I'm not sure that's, I want your input. I don't know if that's possible in some of the schools or not when they're outside.
Some of them are utilizing landmarks or
Okay.
Standing in circles around a certain area. So they will have an indicator for a small child. They're certainly not
Okay.
expecting them to know what a distance of 6 feet is. And you could say, i.e. tape or markings and so forth. But I do know that some of them are, it depends on the physical structure of the building, what the outdoors is like, and different people are using physical structures and not necessarily tape, for example, but they're going to use some kind. I know within the building, for example, they might say, okay, stand 4 tiles away from the student in front of you. It's not necessarily markings. They will use indicators. Again, They're
Okay.
very used to providing direction at their developmental level.
So do you want me to add in some language about that, or do you want me to just leave it as it is? What do you think?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking everyone.
Okay, well, I'll let them answer.
Well, it sounds like you could leave it the way it is, just because, you know, there are already markings and so on. Alicia, is there going to be like a sort of rotating schedule for kids to go outside? I mean, I know they have PE in a manner of speaking, but otherwise, will there be sort of a assigned time for people to go outside for things like mass breaks, or?
Yeah, at the
Is that
building
not-
level, they'll determine when they are able to safely go outside, or areas that they will be designated to go outside. I know, for example, one principal I was talking to who is sectioning off areas for certain classes to be able to go when they're outside, for example.
That, Jackie, that's another thing, like, that we were just talking about, the number of mass breaks, but I think it's building, you know, what the principals decide to do as where, how much, landmarks, you know.
Sure.
You can't really put every single thing in the guideline, but I think it would be up to them.
Okay.
Does anyone else want to comment? I know, Chrissy, you have some questions on the Q&A about this.
Do you
All right,
want to finish going through this
Yeah,
first, or do you want
we
to?
should finish.
Okay.
Yeah, we should
I'm
finish
sorry.
first. Yeah.
Sorry. I thought, okay.
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
can I just remind everyone that if you type in a comment or a question, please type your name and address. I cannot read them unless I have both. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jackie.
So then another suggestion to have hand washing or hand sanitizer, we have that in. And then another suggestion was to provide napkins or paper towels for masks to be set on. I don't know what you think about that. I know some buildings are asking kids to bring in like a little baggie for their masks for mask breaks, but I don't know how you feel about the other, having paper towels, and what do you think about that?
I think it could be difficult, because then you'd have a lot of, I mean, who's going to pick up all those paper towels and so on? It would be better, but I don't know that it belongs in a guidelines document to
I
ask
think it could
parents.
be a suggestion. You may have a student who has a lanyard, for example, and doesn't need that.
Right.
So
But also,
it's
the idea of parents providing a baggie or something like that to hold the mask temporarily is another idea. I don't think it needs to be in the guidelines necessarily, but it could be something that maybe the principals suggest.
I think that's already in the documents we approved last week. I remember seeing that
Right,
in there, that
the dirty mask,
Yeah.
clean mask, yeah,
yes,
Yeah.
they already have it in there.
in the building
Okay.
plans.
Yeah.
right.
Yes, yes.
I'm just wondering what's going to happen to all those napkins or paper towels if everybody gets, if they get distributed twice a day, and, it just seems a little complicated.
Well, I know some teachers were already thinking about putting little containers on the desk that they could just put it in. So I really think that suggestions are great, but the teachers are very creative. And I think, different situations, different size desks, for example, they call for different solutions sometimes.
And then another suggestion was to add signs in mask break areas on how to properly put on and take off. I'm wondering if we already have. Do we have any of those up?
We do have a lot of signs. We can purposefully locate them in areas where they're mask breaks. If they're not already, I think they may actually be. But you can certainly leave that in there. They can always put extra signs there if they're not there.
But we're aiming for being outside as much as possible, right? So I don't know if
Yes.
they'd be attached to a building or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, we can put it right on the glass of the door, or depending on where it is outside.
Okay, I'm just looking at her suggestions for a second. I think that's it.
I think you got it all, Jackie. You did a very good job. All
I
right.
agree.
But I really want to thank Mrs. Mail and her team for for going through this and coming up with all these suggestions too, because, you know, they're the ones that know what they're doing. So I appreciate that.
That was especially helpful to have the EPA recommended disinfectants, because
Yeah.
it just wouldn't have occurred to me, but that was a great suggestion. Yeah.
All right, Chrissy, some
Yep.
questions?
Sure.
Go ahead.
So
Yeah.
the first question, whoops, let me just scroll up. Oh, hold on, sorry. Okay, the first question is from Pam Booth, 35 Vineyard Place. As the parent, actually it's a comment, as the parent of a student with special needs, I agree with Caroline. In this community, there have been lots of support for parents to help their kids getting used to masks. I'd be very concerned if my child is in with a group who are not wearing masks. The next one can wait for open for public discussion. Erica Mandel, 50 Main Street. First of all, thank you for acknowledging that K-2 children are not the same as the older kids and have different needs. My question is, what if the children need a sip of water throughout the day? Is this allowed?
It is
It's
allowed.
my-
In
yeah.
fact, we shut down all the water bubblers because we don't want children putting their face in close proximity to them. However, we have installed bottle fillers in the schools, and the schools that don't have bottle fillers have chilled water coolers. So students can bring in water bottles, and we have disposable cups for students who don't have them. We do recommend that parents with water bottles have a water bottle with a built-in straw or have a straw in it, so that they can keep their mask on when they drink from it. But certainly that's always been the case. They can always drink water whenever they need to.
Jeff Burton, 28 Center Street. What is the policy for PE mask use, PE physical education?
So the PE department had, just as you saw earlier this evening, we had athletic and music policies. The PE department has also created one, and that's going to be coming before the school committee, and that's part of what's in there.
Valerie Frank, 158 Elm. Leaving the location of mask breaks up to the teacher is a huge risk. Some teachers don't value strict mask wearing as highly as doctors might or as the school committee might. Mask-free time will be the riskiest part of the day, and there needs to be crystal clear rules about where this can safely take place.
Each school has identified areas for the teachers and criteria for areas as well.
Okay.
But every structure of every school is different. So that's why I'm not saying the gym of every school, for example, because frankly, some of them don't have gyms. So they have identified those areas.
Tiffany Sears, 16 Della Park Lane, Northeastern. Her comment is, just as an add to that, many diagnoses have sensory issues listed in criteria. And there is one more, but it can wait till the next.
It's not about masks.
Correct.
Okay.
So I can just update this based on our conversation. I'll email it out. I'll send Lynn. I'll make sure to send you a copy as well, so that you can put it in the Google shared thing, Drive, whatever. And then I guess we could maybe vote on it next meeting. What do you guys? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, could we vote on it now? I mean, you've already articulated what changes you're going to make or what you're going to add based on the nurse's recommendations. And
Honestly, the sooner the better, because we're trying to add all these documents to our plan.
that's kind of what I think. Yeah. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. I agree too. So
Okay.
I'll make that, yeah, I'll make that motion that I make a motion to approve the face covering guidelines with the corrections made tonight during the meeting.
O'Neill second.
Wiseman,
Okay, all those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Durant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right, thank you. So, yeah, if you could just send that to us, Jackie, just for one quick look over before you send it on to Lynn, and then if you don't get any feedback, then it's great. but I think what you did is fabulous. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Okay. Reopening update, Dr. Cabral.
I just have a few things because, of course, this is a professional development week for us. We have been providing professional development for all staff. We've gotten great feedback about it. The credit really goes to Assistant Superintendent Pruitt and the Professional Development Committee. They have just done a phenomenal job of putting together in a very short amount of time, a very robust and useful, educational series for our staff, all of our staff members. And again, people have been giving great feedback about it. I've attended some of the sessions. They're fantastic, about social emotional health for students and staff. Race equity is coming up, social justice. We have a lot of collaboration time for departments and grade levels, and it just has been structured very, very well. So a great debt of gratitude to that entire professional development team for putting together a really wonderful program for 11 days of work. For most people, is 11 days of work. We also have been, we received some more DESE documents today that I have been working probably daily. I've been meeting with the Board of Health, either remotely or talking by the phone or sharing information. We have a shared drive right now where we're putting together documents that we have one working document that we've been talking about that we're creating with start-stop procedures and so forth. We're putting all the ancillary materials in there as addendums. We are sharing it as much as we can with the nurses first. We will certainly bring that to the school committee when it's all together, but things are changing. DESE, they just changed something again in terms of how many hours someone needs to be fever-free, for example, before they're allowed to go back into a building. So it keeps changing. We are converting everything to Google Drive documents so that we can update them in real time. I was in a meeting today with the Department of Education, and while we were talking to him, he said something else changed, and he changed the document and resent it to all of us while we were discussing it. So it is just a constant staying on top of it, paying attention to it, and making sure that we're changing it in real time. And as we said before, we ran into this issue with the school calendar. We want to have one iteration of things so that when people look at it, they know, unless they've printed it out, they know that what they're seeing online is the most up-to-date version. It's very critical under these circumstances that we do have the most up-to-date information for everyone. So we have all of that together. We have the matrices that we're using if we need to make any decisions about closing a building, closing the district, having a student or some students or an athletic team or a class or cohort working remotely. There are many different iterations of that. And so we're explaining all the matrices that we're going to be using. We're explaining like tools that we have at our disposal, like being able to dismiss a student or a group or a class or what have you. Definitions, we have a very good glossary of information. So when somebody wants to know, for example, what does it mean to be in a cohort? What does it mean to be in close contact with someone? And I believe, I've said a few times already, we have a contact tracer, someone who is going to be working specifically on contact tracing for the district. We have template letters for parents if their child comes into close contact with someone who's positive for COVID, what they are supposed to do, who they should contact, where they can get more information, what our recommendations are, when they can return to school, all of that information. So school's not in session yet. People don't need that right now. So we really want to make sure that the documents are written well and they are clear. We want to provide a lot of information, but we know that people will generally be reading it when they're nervous about a case, for example. So we want it to be accessible. We want them to be able to find things clearly and quickly. And so that's what we're working on and fine tuning right now. We'll have that document out to everybody. But there's certainly ton of information in there. And as I said before, we are going above and beyond DESE recommendations, for example. So that is what we're doing. We're synthesizing all of the information we're getting from medical professionals and supplementing DESE. We're not satisfied with just using what comes from one organization. We want to make sure that we're using multiple matrices for things. We're already finding, for example, a great deal of flaws with the implementation of the governor's plan of this color-coded chart. We're seeing that even in Easton. So, for example, we're in green again. We were in yellow. That yellow had absolutely no impact on the school department. It's theoretically, we could move into red and have no impact whatsoever on the school department. And so we can't just use one indicator. We need to use a collection of them. It is going to make it more complicated, but we believe it is going to make it more accurate. And we are going to be able to give people information much more quickly. So we will have, as I said, a contact tracer who's going to be working only for the Easton Public Schools, contact tracing any potential cases or confirmed cases, and working with the Board of Health, because they of course have what's called the MAVEN system, and any testing or cases in the Commonwealth are put there. And so they honestly have the information before sometimes even the patient has the information. So we believe we have access to the tools we need to make decisions very quickly. But of course, we want to make sure we have that in document form that we are providing to everybody. So that is, we're getting closer and closer every day, but every day we're adding more documents. So for example, today we added the sample templates that would go out to parents in the event their child was in close contact with someone who was positive, for example. So that's that update. And then, of course, even with the technology so far, we're having some glitches and hiccups. I cannot say this enough times. So please, please bear with me that I keep saying it, but I think it's extremely important, and I probably will take advantage of it at least at every school committee meeting. And that is that those things are going to happen. We had a cabinet meeting today and I looked at a dozen frozen people for an hour. We lost internet in central office yesterday and today for short periods of time, and I had to pick up my phone and work on that. That is going to happen for our remote learners. That's going to happen with teachers. It is what it is, and we will pick up and we will regroup and we will fix it and we will move on. But it's very important that if people go in with an expectation that we have everything worked out, I believe that is an unreasonable expectation. I think that we all need to understand that no one is in danger if the internet goes out, that teachers know what they're doing. They will backfill anything that a student misses. We'll be perfectly fine. They just have to work through those bugs. It's going to be extremely awkward and uncomfortable for teachers. They will work through it too, but it's not going to be helpful if they are catching a lot of flack about things like that. Trust me, they're already going to be extremely uncomfortable that it's happening, and they will work to make it better. We all just need to be really understanding and make sure that they know that we're understanding when things like that happen. That would be extremely, extremely helpful. We want to model that for our kids. We don't want any kids having a meltdown if something happens with their computer. That's life, and we want to teach them resilience. And so it's really important that not only our staff, but our parents and siblings and anybody that might be helping them understand that these are the things that happen when you try something new. And aren't we all really brave and really smart for trying to start something new in this way, and helping our kids understand that that's how we develop as people and that's how we become better. Now, if we have the same problem 35 days in a row, that's a different issue, surely. But we need to understand that while this is school, it's not school as usual. And so especially in the beginning, again, with traffic, with technology, we're going to have a little bit of latitude, trusting that ultimately, overall, our kids are going to get the experience that the teachers know and the service providers know that they need in totality. And I just keep going back to this analogy in my mind. I know when I had my first child, I used to have these panic attacks that she wasn't having the right amount of vegetables or fruit in the day, for example, and I would try to stick green beans into yogurt and these awful concoctions. And I remember very clearly, because it talked me off the ledge more than once, that her very competent pediatrician said, you need to look in the totality over a week. Are they eating enough over the course of a week? Because every day is not going to be perfect. And certainly over the course of a week, she was doing fine, and she's a perfectly well-adjusted, healthy nurse today. So I think we all could maybe use that analogy as we're thinking about the daily hiccups that we might come across. In the totality of a week, it's going to be fine. And we'll get better every day. We're getting wicked smart, I keep saying, and we're just going to keep getting smarter and smarter as the year goes on. And that's all I have for reopening updates right now.
All right, does anyone have any questions on the committee? I do have one question, Dr. Cabral. I know the decision was made. So in pre-K to 2, and I looked at the schedule, is there a reason, like, why? Was it ever thought about that they would stay the whole day? Because they're having lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Was
Yes,
it
we
thought
have thought about that, and we may move to that. We're not there yet. We really
Okay.
believe that this phase is considering what I just said and the hiccups and so forth, considering all of that, we really want to make sure that the children are at a safe distance. They're getting the educational programming effectively before we make any changes. It's easier for us to scale up than to scale back.
Right.
And so certainly
Okay.
we have the opportunity where we could move to full day. We would carefully vet that out. It of course involves many other things, including transportation and things of that nature, but we can always move forward. What we don't want to do is advance too quickly and find out that we have a problem because of that. So we want to be overly cautious in the beginning. We want to minimize the amount of time that people are spending in the building to start until we feel we have it under control, and take small steps forward. And so it isn't without question, but we certainly feel much more comfortable starting with the framework we have right now, and feel that it is very manageable, and then we could always adjust as we go forward.
Okay, thank you. And the other question that I have is, so we know exactly or close to exact how many kids are coming in, cohort A, cohort B, special ed. It's basically in place right now, I would assume, right?
The cohorts are in place. Principals have been notifying the schools of student placements. We have spreadsheets of all of our cohorts, how many students are in them. What we're working on right now is the transportation. And so that follows, because obviously we need to know the cohorts and how many students are on each cohort. So one thing follows another. So we're working on transportation right now, and parents will get that information as soon as it's finished. But they should be, if they haven't already, certainly I would imagine by the end of this week. I don't think any principals were planning on sending anything out next week. I think it was all scheduled to go out by Friday of this week. But certainly they're in the process of getting all that information out right now. And I know many, many families have already been notified.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Caroline, I saw your hand up.
Well, I actually do have a question. What was the thinking? I mean, to tell you the truth, I was somewhat surprised when I saw that the 3 early elementary schools were going to be having lunch, because I know a lot of the discussion that we had earlier, and even in the facilities group, had to do with, you know, the lunch being a more complicated process in a time like this. So what was the thinking that went into that change? Because that was not part of the initial proposal for any of the schools to have lunch provided at school.
Right. So it started with the teachers' understanding of the biological needs of kids, and knowing that between the bus time on the way to school, the 4.5 hours in school, and then the ride home, they certainly were going to need a snack of some kind. And since we determined they were going to get snacks, it wasn't a huge leap to then move to a lunch, especially once we talked to food service and we determined that the lunch offerings were really going to be very simple. They were all going to be prepackaged. And at the pre-K to 2 schools, because the students were in one classroom, they could very easily be delivered to the rooms and eaten right there. So because of that, we really determined that it wouldn't be that much of a leap from the snack that they were convinced was going to be necessary and the lunches, in addition to the idea of, kindergarten students, for example, taking a bagged lunch home on the bus with their backpack and their device. There was just a sort of a confluence of concerns that was much more easily solved at the pre-K to 2 level because of the possibility of the lunches being pre-made and delivered and eaten in one space with appropriate social distancing. And so that's why it was determined to have it done that way.
So they're gonna have just lunch then and not a snack too?
The
Lunch
idea
is
is to have
taking the
lunch.
plate.
It's up to the teacher. We serve breakfast also. So what we're thinking, I don't know if this is the case, this is a tip perhaps for parents. What we're thinking is instead of bringing in a breakfast, what some parents may do is actually, instead of bringing in a snack, what some parents might actually do is have their student purchase breakfast and lunch. And the breakfast typically is, some dry cereal or even cereal with milk or a bagel, something that reasonably could be eaten as a snack as well. So we think that a lot of parents may actually be purchasing breakfast and just have the teacher put it aside. They save it for snack time and then they have lunch. So
there is a snack time and a lunch then?
Yes, probably. I mean, if a teacher's finding that most of the students are having a breakfast, then they need to determine that they probably don't need a snack and then they'd have lunch. But I would imagine most people are we don't have a huge breakfast program pre-K to 2. So I probably didn't explain that very clearly. So most of our pre-K to 2 students don't order breakfast. We find that it's mostly our middle and high school students that order breakfast before school. What usually happens is they have snack and they have lunch. So because we're offering breakfast and lunch to everyone, and we think they're all going to be free because of the federal meal program that we applied for, we're thinking that a lot of parents are going to purchase breakfast, but not as breakfast, as the snack. However, if I have a class of students in front of me and none of them had breakfast and the parents ordered breakfast, they're probably going to have breakfast. And if all of my students are having breakfast, then they're probably not going to have a snack. They'll have lunch.
Well, I have to be honest that, eating 2 meals, potentially 3 in a classroom with masks off, actually, I think is a concern. Sorry, I just have to say that.
No, it's okay. But the bagels and things they eat with their mask on. And we are also encouraging meals outside. For the time being, the meals are outside. So should it become cold or inclement, we can talk about that and think about that later. But that's the idea at this point.
When kids get breakfast, assuming they don't save it for snack, where would they be eating the breakfast?
Same thing, either outside or in the classroom.
Okay, it's the classroom, of course, that concerns me, but okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from school committee? All right, Chrissy, you have some, well, you know what? Are there any other questions about reopening? Okay, so now I'm going to move to public comment. Chrissy.
Lauren Loomis, 4 Abbey Road. It is completely unrealistic for a PK to 2 to not have a substantial snack or lunch. Thank you for allowing this. You would otherwise have hangry, unproductive 4 to 7-year-olds. That's all I have.
And the phys ed teacher said hangry is an actual thing. So I'm going to listen to them. Okay. And that's it for comments. All right.
Yes,
awesome. All right. Superintendent Notes, Dr. Cabral.
I think I covered it in reopening. I will say, every single staff member that requested an accommodation has been personally met with. If further conversations were necessary or further details, they then met with their principal. And I have written up accommodation forms for every single person that I've met, with the exception of the high school, which I will be doing this evening and all day tomorrow. But every other school has already received the accommodation forms back. So every concern has been addressed.
Thank you. Assistant Superintendent Notes.
I just want to take the opportunity to reiterate what Dr. Cabral was talking about with professional development. We have continued our professional development and planning this week. It has been so wonderful to feel the energy and enthusiasm back in the buildings. We had Riverside Community Care run a wonderful session for our entire staff yesterday on trauma and how the COVID-19 pandemic may have caused trauma in some of our students. The presenter, Joanna Bridger, she answered many questions that our staff had and shared strategies on how to use strategies on how to support our students. On Monday, Dr. Robert Brooks will be presenting to the staff on resilience in the face of COVID-19. Dr. Robert Brooks is a psychologist on the faculty at Harvard Medical School. He's lectured nationally and internationally and has written extensively about the themes of resilience, parenting, family relationships, school climate, and how to balance personal and professional lives. On Tuesday, Teresa Moore from Providence College and Letitia Fusel from Stonehill will be working with our staff on social justice and equality, and equity. We're looking forward to this high quality professional development for our staff. And also, I shared a few meetings ago, we implemented something called Easton Ed Camp during our professional development and planning days over the 11 days, which provides structure collaboration opportunities for staff. I was excited to see, I opened my inbox one morning and saw a wonderful video by our staff from each building. And they were sharing examples of what they've learned through Easton Ed Camp and their experiences. It was really remarkable. So I just want to give a shout out and thank you to Chris Koutros and Rodney Schusler, teachers from Oliver Ames, for bringing this idea to the Professional Development Committee for implementation. It has been highly effective. That's all I have tonight. If you have any questions or comments,
I will add something that Chrissy just reminded me of. So the mental health presentation that she just spoke about, Teresa Skinner, during this meeting actually sent out an all call to let everybody know about it. This is a very interesting phenomenon here in the district that I'm going to take the opportunity. I know we probably don't have a lot of viewers right now, but maybe in the next 10 years, people can share this with one another and someday it will be fixed. But every single time we send a phone call, which is what it's still happening, which is why we typically do it after school hours and after our office is closed. I don't know if you've heard, I've been muting myself an awful lot. We've probably gotten 85 to 90 phone calls in the last 25 minutes, because what always happens is people will call and say, I just got a call from this number. What is it about? And the staff, our office literally shuts down when we do this during the school day. And the staff just says, can you please check your messages? And people say, but I'm on the phone now. Can you just read me the message? And the staff can't always do that because they're not the one who sent the message. So it really ties up our office. It would be really great if people listen to their message. They also get an email that goes with it most of the time. If they could please do that. It is a phenomenon that has happened for the 7 years that I've been here. And I've literally had to mute myself because the phone has been ringing off the hook. And that's what it is. If you get a call from Easton Public Schools, we're sending you a message, especially if it's at 7 o'clock at night. There's nothing wrong with your child or anything. So please check your messages, because we don't have the manpower to answer 90 phone calls in 25 minutes. And it also ties up our line for things like emergencies or schools calling us or something like that. So just a little public service announcement I thought I'd throw out there because we just witnessed it again. But for those of you that received the phone call that was from Teresa Skinner advertising that. So please go back and listen to your message and you will have the details for that wonderful offering that's coming up.
Yeah, and Teresa, she was great. She and some of the counselors booked a separate webinar, which is what this message is about, by Dr. Nami Turk, entitled Building Strength, Maintaining Momentum, and Preparing to Engage, Now More Than Ever, COVID-19 in the Upcoming School Year. So that's separate from the presentation that the staff will be hearing. And we're just eternally grateful for Teresa setting those up with in collaboration with our school counselors. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, school committee notes. Caroline.
I have actually a sort of general question for Leisha or Chrissy. I've been hearing that the rate of vaccination of all vaccinations is down substantially. I think in part because people haven't been wanting to go to doctor's offices or clinics or whatever to have their children vaccinated. I know this probably applies primarily to kindergarten and pre-kindergarten students, but how are we doing in terms of tracking general vaccine compliance? Because I know that's an issue. And related to that, I wanted to mention that the American Academy of Pediatrics, I know that there's a mandate for the flu vaccine by the end of December, but the American Academy of Pediatrics is strongly recommending that children from 6 months on up receive that vaccine in October, because there really is a concern that there'll be a lot of confusion between flu diagnoses and COVID diagnoses. But there's also some evidence that the flu vaccine may actually have some mitigating effect on even if someone were to contract COVID. So I just wanted to encourage people to do that. But I'm wondering how we're doing in terms of tracking general vaccine compliance.
So we've been hearing the same things. The nurses are very used to dealing with the compliance. We have not gotten word that it has been exceedingly different this year or that they have any concerns. So if that happens, we will certainly work to problem solve that. However, students are not allowed to enter school unless they have all the appropriate vaccinations. So unless we hear differently, things are going well. We do have, we have been getting a lot of correspondence, not to sort of promote any particular vendor, but CVS, for example, and some other pharmacies have been letting us know that they are providing clinics where children can get the vaccination. So they don't necessarily need to go to their family doctor. So there are some opportunities opening up, certainly public, some of the bigger cities, public health clinics have them as well. So I would definitely encourage parents, if they're looking to get an appointment for the flu shot, that they might want to reach out to some of these area pharmacies or clinic or urgent care clinics to inquire, because many of them are actually working on getting extra stores of the flu vaccine for this exact reason, to try to meet this need. So I would just sort of encourage parents to do that. And again, if we hear that there's any issue with the vaccinations of the incoming students, we will certainly let you know. But as of now, we have not heard that that's the case.
Great, thank you. And Nancy, the only other thing I wanted to mention, it's a brief public service announcement. I just happened to read in the New York Times about 2 days ago. You know, we have those behavior surveys, risk behavior surveys that our students have taken several times in the last several years. And so we know that we do have vaping going on among our older students in particular. Vaping, the newest evidence is that vaping is associated with a 5-fold increase in risk of contracting COVID-19, 5 times as high a risk for students who vape. So I just kind of wanted to, I know that we don't have a lot of attendees compared to recent weeks, but I'm hoping that anyone who does have students in that age group, that they remind their students that they're actually creating a much higher risk for themselves and for potentially their classmates if they're engaged in vaping. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle.
Yes, I just once again want to thank administration, teachers and staff who are working tirelessly in the last days as we get ready for the opening of school and really working out those final details. I know it's a lot of work, and I'm appreciated that you are all doing that and making this happen for our students. And just like a little moments of normalcy I've noticed on Facebook with the notifications of people's teachers and parents who's got this teacher and who's students in that. And it's really nice to see that little bit of normalcy about who's in the classes and what's the back to school list and back to school shopping. And so it's just kind of a little shining moment in the chaos. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Jackie?
Following up a little bit of what Michelle said, I just wanted to wish everyone a very happy first and second day next week going back to school. I'm so happy.
You can tell she's a mom.
You need to do that Staples commercial, the most wonderful time of the year.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to wish everyone, all the teachers and administrators and staff and parents, a great first week next week. And thank you to everyone that's made this possible.
Jen?
Same thing as Jackie. It feels almost surreal that, a week from now, my kids are cohort B. So it's just, I'm glad that the day is approaching, and just, knowing, having an insider view of how much work this is taken by everybody, just so appreciative and getting excited. And it seems kind of surreal that, it's been 6 months since our kids have been in the building. So very excited to have them have the opportunity to go back and see their peers and see their teachers, and then connect with, their friends online as well. Will be remote. So very happy.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for the committee. So next Thursday, if you want to meet, we can meet. Our next scheduled meeting is the 24th, a Zoom meeting at 5 o'clock. But do you believe that we should meet? Should we continue to meet while school's reopening and everything? Let me know your thoughts, please, Caroline.
Well, it's very tempting next Thursday to find out how the first few days went. But I know also, though, that obviously Dr. Cabral and Ms. Pruitt are incredibly busy. So I would ask for their input on that.
Okay. Michelle, what do you think?
Well, I was initially saying yes, but Carolyn brought up a good point that
It's the first day.
you're going to be spinning in circles, so maybe we should give them a break.
Jackie, what do you think?
I was thinking yes too, but I didn't really think about what Caroline had brought up. So yeah, if they, maybe we give them a break next week so that they can just survive the first couple of days of school.
And Jen, same thing you're feeling?
Yeah, I agree. I'd be fine meeting, but appreciate that it's going to be a very chaotic day.
Dr. Cabral, how do you feel?
We're going to be right here. So I
Be honest.
can't really predict how the day is going to go. So I won't really know until probably that afternoon if I'm still working, trying to problem solve for the very next day of school. I don't know. It's possible.
Okay. And Mrs. Pruitt, how do you feel?
Again, we're here, so it doesn't make a difference. However, I do think that we'll have a better picture on the 24th. I think the 17th is going to be very reactive. I think we'll have a better picture on the 24th to report how the opening of school has been. But again, if you want to meet, we're here.
We'll have
Okay.
limited data on the 17th.
Yes.
Okay.
As a data
Now-
person, yes, we will have limited data. Good point.
What I do want to add to this, though, we can forego the meeting on the 17th, but if we do need to convene in an executive session for negotiations, we could put that together. We can have
That
a
is
meeting. with just-
possible.
Okay,
That is possible.
okay. So why don't we
Would it-
say
would it-
no?
Nancy, should we
Go ahead.
schedule an executive session then, and then it can always be taken off the schedule? I mean, you know, we have to post things so early. Should we schedule an executive session just on the off chance that we do have to have one, and then we can always cancel it?
So on the 17th?
Well,
Doesn't
what
even
do you
need to
think?
be on the 17th. It could be earlier in the week if that makes more
Right.
sense, if that would be easier for
True,
Dr.
could be
Cabral and
earlier.
Mrs. Pruitt.
Yeah, what do you
Um,
think, Dr. Brown?
Our next meeting with the unit is on Monday, so we could potentially meet Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, Tuesday would be tough to post in time, I guess, if we did it tomorrow morning, but
We could.
yeah,
meet
Tuesday or Wednesday. Is that okay for you, Jackie?
Yep.
And if we're just doing an executive session meeting, we don't have to meet at 5 o'clock either, right? Although
Right.
some of you have to work. So, I mean, I guess we would keep it at 5 o'clock, right?
If it's Tuesday, I would just need it to be after 5:30. If
Okay,
it's Wednesday, I could do whenever.
okay.
Nancy, why
So-
don't you work with Dr. Cabral and like figure out a
Okay.
good time for an executive
All right.
session so we can update everybody. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, so our next real scheduled meeting is going to be Thursday, September 24th at 5 o'clock. And then there may be an executive session in the midst of that. And again, good luck to everybody next week as you begin. We're pioneers. You guys are the pioneers, and as much news as you watch, it's kind of crazy, but we want everybody to stay safe. And somebody said this earlier, be kind to each other. So let's see if we can muddle through this mess. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
O'Neill, so move.
Grant, second. Say it's Star.
Yeah, we should have little signs or little flags or something.
All right. All those in favor?
O'Neill, yes.
Grant, yes.
DeLuca, yes.
Wiseman, yes.
Star, yes.
All right. Stay healthy, everybody. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Joe.
Bye. Good night.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
as well.